It is time to do a reading wrap-up and reflection for November. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm super excited to be here today and to share with you my reading stats and reflection for November. I feel like I added a word there. We're just going to go with it. If you are new here for this video, welcome. I hope that you enjoy it. These do tend to be longer videos, so I will leave jump links down below, and on the progress bar I will put the different sections for the video. So we always start off with the stats, then we move and look to standalone reading versus series reading. Then I will check in on my projects and challenges that are my yearly goals. I'll reflect back at the month as a whole and see how I did for my TBR, or if there were any monthly challenges that I was working on, and then round things off with some favorites. And yeah, so let's get right into it. In the month of November, I read a total of 30 titles, one per day. Wasn't really intentional, but then it kind of got intentional. Overall, I read 5,251 pages, and my daily page average for reading was 175 pages a day. My best day was 541 pages. I, do not remember that day, but I certainly remember my lowest page day at 17 pages. I don't remember the specific day, but yeah, my reading does start to taper off as we get closer to the end of the year, and I'm definitely more in the sort of 17 pages a day count as we are going through December. But let's stay in November. Let's see at the breakdown of the titles per title type or length. I read 3 graphic novels or comics. I read 8 volumes of manga for a total of 11 visual works, and then I read 1 YA novel, 1 adult novel, 2 plays, 3 works of nonfiction, 3 novellas, 3 kids novels, and 3 romantic suspense novels. And the average page length per title was 179 pages, which is very, very close to what I read today. And given that I read 30 titles over November, which has 30 days, that actually makes a lot of sense. But they are slightly different stats because I count how many pages I read a day, and then, depending on when I finish the book, it gets included in the month of the finishes. Okay, on to the genre breakdown. I read 1 adventure title, 1 contemporary title, 1 historical work, 1 history work, which was nonfiction history. I read 1 drama. I read more than 1 play, but 1 didn't have its own genre, so I'm just calling it drama. I think that's right. I read 1 dystopic, 1 urban fantasy, 1 weird, 2 superhero, 2 memoirs, 2 romance, historical romances. 1 was Georgian, 1 was Regency. Let me know if it's interesting to know the different historical periods. I think I will start tracking it more come the future, so we'll see about that. And then back to the genres, I read 3 dark fantasies, 3 horrors, 3 works of poetry, 3 romantic suspense, and 4 romance fantasies. Those were often, the dark fantasy, the horror, and the romance fantasies were all for the manga, so I'm still trying to figure out the best way to describe the genre for the different manga I read. So sometimes it's like romance fantasy is like close to dark fantasy, sort of, kind of, depends on the work. I don't know. I just sort of pick and stick for the series, and so that might throw my stats a little bit, but not too much. Anyway, let's look at the format. I read 2 audiobooks this month. Woo woo, go me! It's usually 1 a month, but I also read a Goosebumps on audio, so it's only 2 hours, but it counts. I read 5 physical works this month. Most of them were sort of these trade paper, these like skinny trades, and then I also read 1 sort of more floppy trade, so I read 5 physical, but all paperback of some ilk, 8 works on my Kindle, and then 15 on my Fire tablet, so I'm definitely back to reading stuff on my tablet. And then in terms of ratings, yeah, it wasn't the best month. So I read 3 that I gave 6.5 out of 10, 1 that I gave 6.75 out of 10, 6 got 7 out of 10, and then 11 got 7.5 out of 10, which was the majority, and that does tend to be my sort of baseline rating for things. And then there were 5 works that got 8 out of 10, and 4 that got 8.5 out of 10, and that is where the ball drops. I did not read anything that was a 9, a 9.5, or a 10. Which makes me understand the month, because I felt like it was like only an okay month, even though my average is 7.5, which is just a smidge lower than October at 7.6, but it didn't feel like as good a reading month, but it's just because there wasn't anything 9 and above. There still was a lot of enjoyable titles, but there wasn't like, there wasn't I don't know, there wasn't anything above that. So anyway. Now we go on to what I call the verses section. So I'm going to share the shortest and longest work that I read, the highest and lowest rated that I read, the most and least popular that I read, and the oldest and newest that I read. The shortest work that I read was Some Like It Scandalous by Carole Mortimer at 48 pages. This is the prequel to the Daring Duchesses series. It's one of the historical romance novellas that I read. And then the longest work that I read was GoGo Monster by Taiyo Matsumoto at 472 pages, and that was one of the mangas that I read, and it was long. I started it in September during a readathon, but I didn't finish it in time, so it had to go back to the library, and then I had to renew it or request it again. So I read that, and I actually started from the beginning because it had been a fair amount of time, and it was quite an enjoyable, although very bizarre read. And it was the longest. Manga was the longest. That's the first, I think. In terms of the highest rated that I read, it was Yona of the Dawn, Volume 3, which got a 4.48, which is an extraordinary rating. Volume 2 was actually not far behind. It was actually the next in line. I gave it a 7.5. I enjoyed it. I'm sort of trying to decide whether or not I want to continue Yona of the Dawn or Dawn of the Arcana. I'm kind of reading them at the same time, and I think that that's not working because they're kind of similar but different with the sort of fictional monarchy situation, and so that's not really working for me. So I think I might pick Dawn of the Arcana, but it might come down to what is more available at the library. I think one of them tends to have holds and the other one doesn't. So anyway, let me know your thoughts. Yona of the Dawn or Dawn of the Arcana? Let me know. And then the lowest rated work that I read was The Tantalizing Miss Cole by Sarah Mallory, which was the first, or a prequel novella for the notorious Cole brothers, which had a 3.24, and I gave it a 7.5. I quite enjoyed it. Both that one, The Tantalizing Miss Cole, and the Some Like It Scandalous, are Harlequin Undone, which are Harlequin historical novellas, and they're often like start of series or in-betweeners in series, and I really love them. And I love that you can find on Fiction Database, you can get a whole list of them. Thank you again, as always, to Sarah for her Harlequin just knowledge galore, because I think I might just go through and read the Undones because I really like them, and I really like reading novellas. Although I might try and I read both of them because they're in a bind up that the library has. It's like the oldest ebook Harlequin historical, and I've read one of the three, and then the first book in series for both of those is also in that bind up. So I might try and read the Harlequin historicals as of the oldest that my library has on digital, like on e-copy, because then you're starting series potentially mostly, and there's less holds on older works. I find like trying to get a Harlequin on the month of release from the library is just like, no. Everyone's trying to do that. So I'm like, well, for me, it doesn't matter that it's not from this month, So I thought, why don't I just go to the oldest that they have and work that way? So we shall see if I do that. That might be a project for the new year. Okay, on to the most and least popular. The most popular, this surprised me, very much surprised me. The most popular title that I read this month was Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer, which had 886,220 ratings. That's right, 886,220 ratings. Wow. I had no idea it was that popular. Like, I knew that it was made into the movie, and I knew a lot, and I actually know a lot of people that have read it, or when I have shown that I'm reading it, and I finished it this month. It took me forever. Like, a lot of people commented on it, and Jon Krakauer is a very, well-known author and stuff. So, but I was very surprised it was the most popular. Like, it's up there with, it's almost it's almost 1 million ratings, which is really, really popular. And then the least ratings, actually, I have the book here. The least ratings I have was Something Small to Carry Home by Izzy Millman, which had 2 ratings, which is this work of poetry, and I really enjoyed it. It is a Canadian work. It is it's from Quattro Books. I got it secondhand at Bookends. So, you know, I don't know if not a lot of people are reading Canadian poetry, or, you know, I know that I think the distribution for poetry doesn't tend to be as wide, but I thought it was quite lovely. So, but that had 2 ratings, so me and one other person. Not too many there. But I definitely, you know, I enjoyed it. So, okay, now to the oldest and most recent. So the oldest work that I read was The Pretenders by Ibsen. I am working my way through his plays, and it was translated by William Archer. It is from 1863. And then I actually read 3 2020 releases. They were all part of the Fortress Defense series by Julianne Lindsay, which I read with the Who Picked This book club with Nicole and Jen over on Nicole's channel. And so I read Deadly Cover-Up, Missing in the Mountains, and Marine Protector. They are all romantic suspense harlequins. And yeah, so those, and they were all released this year. Now we're on to series versus standalone works. So out of the 30 titles I read this month, 19 were series works and 11 were standalones. So that's 63% series and 37% standalone. That's actually a bit low for me, but it's higher from last month. October, I was at 50-50, which is very unusual. Yeah, so it's up a bit, but not to where it usually is. I started 5 new series, including those 2 prequels, which was very intentional. Sometimes I unintentionally start series. I don't know, does it feel better when it's intentional? I don't know. Anyway, so I started 5 new series. 12 of the works I read continued series that I was already reading. I caught up on 1 series. I think that was Jonesy. And then I completed 1 series with The Monsters of Verity by V.E. Schwab. That one actually, like, I read right at the beginning of the month. It was actually on my October TBR, but I didn't finish it until November, so it counts for November. Now on to projects and challenges. Okay, so I have 39 different projects and challenges that I am working through throughout 2020. I've never outlined them all, and now we're at the end of the year, and this will actually probably be the last stats video that I do because I always need to take a break in the new year, so I probably won't do my December stats. So this is it for the month, unless I could always work it into a Friday reads if there's something in particular, but generally speaking for me, my reading winds down in December. My reading in December is completely unreliable. If I read stuff, great, but if I don't, that's fine too. I just know that that's the rhythm of things for me. So, but that being said, when for November, I think I did pretty well. So 16 of the 30 titles I read were for different projects or challenges that I am working towards. And with those 16 books, I met 27 challenges. Yeah, there was one book that met, I think it was Our Dark Duet, met 5 challenges. I was so excited. Overall, I got 3.7% closer to my overall goal, which is 731 challenges. So anyway, and I'm currently sitting at 47.69% of those 731 challenges. Now, my goal actually obviously is not going to be, like, I'm not pretending I'm going to get 300 challenges met in a month. It's just not going to happen. But I would love to get to 50%. One of the reasons why that challenge number is so high is sometimes it's an entire backlist for a particular project, and sometimes I picked, like, I'm going to read 5 of this project, so the number's a bit all over. It doesn't matter, it doesn't stress me out, but I would love to get to 50% by the end of the year, and that would mean meeting 16.9 more challenges, which I met more of in November, so maybe it's possible. I'm not quite sure. There's one challenge I'm pretty confident that I'm going to finish probably before this video even goes up. But as of now, there were actually, I finished 1 challenge early in the year from the 39, and in November I've completed 3 more challenges, so I am thrilled about that. One of them was to read a certain amount of Canadian works, and and I did, but I didn't quite notice it till I was in the middle of it, but I read these 3 volumes of Canadian poetry, and that got me to my goal, so I was like, yeah! So it doesn't always have to be a long book that gets you to your goal. I actually exceeded my goal by 2 for Canadian works. I also hit my target for reading diversely, and which I was originally only had at 24, and then I upped it to 38. And like I feel like generally speaking, that feels like a good goal, but given the fact that I read like 30 titles, can read up to 30 titles in a month, it doesn't feel like enough of a goal. So my current goal is 4 titles. Like as of October, I think my current goal has been 4 titles a month. And so that would make, what would that make? 48. So that would be more. Still feels low. I don't know. But anyway, I hit my target. I increased it halfway through the year. I increased it. I met my new target. I'm definitely going to keep going on that one. I think reading diversely is very important. And it's something that I didn't used to track because sometimes it felt a bit strange in terms of like having an identity be a tick box, and I didn't like that. But then when I thought about it a bit more, I realized if I don't track it, then I don't know how I'm doing. And if I don't notice that I'm not reading diversely, then I can't correct myself and read more diversely. And it is important to me, so I need something to work towards. I need something to work on. Now, like, and I tend to go with diverse being the author is from a marginalized group. That tends to be how I tend to think of diversity or how I'm tracking diversity. And that's not always something that is apparent or I can figure out. But also, on the other hand, I don't think that that's something that someone should have to reveal for my freaking stats. Like, no. They get their own life. It's not, and that's one of the things where I find sometimes it can feel a bit like not great. But if the information is available, then, that's great. But I don't feel like people should have to self-identify for my stats. That's just ridiculous. So anyway, it's something that I am continuing to work on, not only reading diversely, but also trying to figure out the best way to track it and trying to get less uncomfortable with doing so. I think I did, and okay, I could go into more, but it's also something that I do find challenging to talk about, so I don't want to say anything incorrectly, but I also don't want to not talk about anything because that's also a problem. So anyway, so I am trying to increase my diverse reading, and I have a couple projects in mind and a couple of lists that I'm going to work through in the new year. Probably like I don't tend to set my goals ahead of time, but those ones I kind of have. So anyway, I am working on it. It is obviously I find hard to talk about, but I also find it's very important. So it's worth the work. So there we go. We're going to leave it there. And then the other title, oh gosh, I wasn't going to say this, but the other challenge that I hit, and I didn't know that I hit this one, is reading stories about women. And specifically for me, this is what I'm looking for is women's stories that are by women and that are about their lives outside of their relationships, so about themselves or their philosophy on life or the work that they do or the change they want to see in the world or the change they bring to the world or art or philosophy, these kinds of things outside of relationships, because I find so many stories that we get, whether they're fiction or nonfiction, about women is about their relationships, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just, I want to hear other elements as well. So I set my challenge, a challenge for myself to read that this year, and I did, and the last one I hit it with was, The Woman I Wanted to Be by Diane von Furstenberg, which is a memoir. She is a fashion designer. It's a fair amount of it was about her family and relationships, but it was very much about her and her identity and her relationship with herself and the person that she wanted to be, and when that happened and when that didn't happen, and those kinds of things. So for me it fit. It's something that I don't feel like anybody talks about, but it's something that I'm always on the lookout for, and so that's that. And then earlier this year I did complete the challenge of reading all of Shakespeare. I had previously read all of the plays, and then I finished off with the narrative poems and the sonnets, and I think that's it. I read the whole complete works plus the 2 slightly accredited plays as well. So that means I've hit 4 out of the 39 challenges. I think I can meet one more. I would like to finish off the my A to Z for graphic novels and comics. I'm in the middle of the last 2 letters. It's taking me a while. I am surprised. I'm like, oh, there's all these words. I picked wordy ones. So usually when it's more visual, it's a lot faster. Anyway, so yeah, so I met 4 out of my 39 goals. I'm feeling pretty confident about the 5th, but to be honest, that'll probably be it for the year out of the 39, which is, well, 5 out of 40 is half, and half again. 12.5%, I think, around. So that, you know, I don't know. Does that feel good? I don't know. Anyway, okay, I got off track there a little bit. Okay, so now to look at some of my month-specific challenges. Every month I have the goal to read half of my currently reading as I go from one month to the other. In October, I started off with 32 titles on my currently reading, so my goal was 16, but I only read 11. I'm not doing so good on this goal at this part of the year, but anyway, but I did read 11, so that's pretty good, or finish 11. For my Stacking the Series challenge, I read 2 for my sci-fi, fantasy, and weird tier, and I read 0 for my romance one. I didn't even set a goal for that. I have not been doing good at that, or well at that, and we're just gonna keep going. I did participate very lightly in one readathon in November, which was Nonfiction November. I set the goal to read 4 works of nonfiction because the goal is always to read more than you normally do, and my current average was, I guess, around 3. But I read 3, so I was very close. I think I finished a nonfiction work in early December, but I didn't finish it. So, but I was still close, and that is more, and I'm glad. I don't know why I've been reading less nonfiction this year. It used to be sort of 30% of my reading, and now not as much. Anyway, looking back at my TBR as a whole, I was very low-key this month, and November and December I did a sort of collective TBR. There were about 20 titles that were November specific or hopeful to read in November, and I read 12 of those 20, and then I started an additional 3 of the remaining works, and but yeah, I didn't do awesome. I didn't feel like a really awesome month overall, to be honest. But I just kept reading, and I didn't have any days where I didn't read, so yeah. All right, now we're going to look at the favorites for the month. Some of these I have mentioned, some of them I have mentioned. So these are all ones that I gave 8.5 out of 10, so these were my top tier books. And first up we have GoGo Monster. As I mentioned before, this is by Taiyo Matsumoto, translated by Camellia Nieh, and the English adaptation is by Annette Roman. Any of the titles I mentioned, I will leave all of the information down below, like the full title and stuff like that, because I don't know, maybe people, I try and do that with all my videos because I don't do any editing, like I only do like in-camera editing like this, so I always try and leave the titles down below. So now I'm off topic again. So I already mentioned this one a little bit. It is a sort of kids at school. There's some paranormal, strange stuff that happens, and a really nice gardener, and then this one kid with his bag on his head, and animals and a map, and monsters. Obviously, I did not pick up on everything that was going on in the story. I had a hard time following the story, but I really, really enjoyed it. I also really enjoyed the art style, especially like the shapes of the faces and the bodies were quite different than I see in a lot of the manga I read, so it made me really happy to try something new. It was also really nice to read something that was all in one story, even if it was close to 500 pages, and I would definitely read it again. I loved it. Also followed the seasons, which was really nice. But overall, I will say I had a hard time following the story and the characters, and some of the stuff was rather disturbing. So it was a very unique read, and I'm glad that I got it. I was thrilled that my library had it, and yeah, so that was one of my 4 favorites. And then also one of my favorites was Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell, illustrated by Faith Aaron Hicks, who's Canadian, and the color is by Sarah Stern. This is set on, it's either I can't remember if it was on Halloween or the last day of like a pumpkin festival fair type situation, and it follows 2 friends who have been working together throughout the harvest holiday season, and it's their last year because they're going to go away to school. So this is the last night of the last year, and it was really, really, really quite wonderful. I very much enjoyed reading it. I remember people talking about it last year, and then Sarah from A Bookish Knitter mentioned that you didn't have to read it for Halloween, so I read it in November, and it was a great seasonal read, even though it was after Halloween, so thank you, Sarah. The two other favorites of the month include Night Eater by Patricia Young. This is a work of poetry. It's one of the 3 that I picked up from Bookends at some particular point in time, and this one really, really got me. These are by Quattro Books, and I got several. It's poetry I find hard to talk about, but it was just really wonderful, and I'm trying to see if there's a... Oh yeah, this one. Towards a list of definitions according to my mother. And so she lists a whole bunch of words and how her mother would describe them by definition. It was delightful. It was really, really delightful. And that's unusual. That was, I think, the only poem that was like that. But it was great. I really enjoyed it. And it reminded me to read more poetry, which is something I would like to do. And then also, one of my faves, Magic Misfits by Neil Patrick Harris and Alex Azam, Story Artistry by Lizzie Marlin, and How to Magic Art by Kyle Hinton. And this does have How to Magic. How to Magic. How to roll a coin across your knuckles. And it's illustrated, and it has lots of representation, including a character who's in a wheelchair, and misfits, and friendship, and mystery, and intrigue, and puzzles. There's also puzzles. I'm trying to find another good. I can't remember what the flags mean. Just great. It was really, really great. Buddy read this with Izzy, Izzy from Punk Rock Girl PA. The live show for that is up. I will leave a link in the cards and as well down below if you would like to check it out. We got off topic a lot, but still, we did talk about the book a fair amount. We have decided to continue the series, so we will be continuing the series, and the live show for the second book will be, I think it's the first the first Tuesday in January, the 5th or so. I'll leave it down below. Of course, that could be subject to change because, life. But generally speaking, that's what we said. And yeah, and it'll always be on Twitter and stuff. And if you haven't, I don't know when this is going up. Okay, I was just going to mention Grinchathon. If you hadn't heard about Grinchathon, is going on from December 13th to the 19th. Especially if you are not someone who is a fan of the holidays, it is a great place to hang out and read together. If you're a fan of the holidays, it's fine too. I do tend to like the holidays, but if you're feeling kind of grumpy, it is a great place to hang out with some people who won't bug you about holiday stuff. That's not going to happen there. So yeah, so if I can't remember when this video is going up, but otherwise it might have already happened. Otherwise, December 13th to the 19th are the dates for that. All right, I have rambled enough. So there you go. That was my reading in November. Let me know, do you keep on doing your reading goals all the way to the very end of the year? I haven't seen anyone do a yearly wrap up yet, but I think it's only a matter of time. I always give myself to till I fall asleep on New Year's Eve, not even midnight. I go past that till I fall asleep. New Year's Day when I wake up, that is when the new reading year starts for me. But as I said, I only anticipate finishing one more goal, although I'm sure I'll finish a lot more books, hopefully. Hopefully. I'm getting burned out. All right, so let me know. Do you keep on keeping on right until the new year, or do you call it quits early? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching.